In this lesson, we're going to talk about the proper material and steps needed to solder copper pipe. Things that we'll need: flux. Try to use some kind of aqua flux, something that no corrodes. Things they used in the past, not that great for your pipes or your health. Lead-free solder. Comes in a roll. Whenever you pull it out, like to get a hook on it, really helps you get around the pipe. Fitting brush. They come in different sizes. If you're soldering 1/2 inch copper, get a 1/2 inch brush. 3/4 copper, 3/4, and so on. Flux brush is what you would use to apply the flux paste to whatever you're working on at the moment. The copper pipe. Sandcloth or sandpaper, it'll be used to clean the pipe, because the pipe and the fitting have to be spotless, not just clean, but also scraped before making the solder joints. Tubing cutters. And today, while we're soldering this, we'll also show you how to use the mini cutters. You don't always have room for these big old, very easy to use tools. So they make this small one that's really tough to use, but gets in small places. Now, to start off with solder joint, say you got a pipe sticking off the ground, you need to replace a hose bib. Take the pipe, sandcloth, you're going to clean the pipe. Now you can tell when it's clean because it'll be shining like chrome when you're done. And no, it's not okay if you miss a spot. A couple times around, check all around. If you can't get to the back side, you can always use a mirror. Clean it real well. And you can either solder the hose bib directly onto the pipe. I don't prefer that method. If you want, you can solder this threaded fitting on here. And that way every time you got to replace your hose bib, you can just unscrew it and be in and out no problem. Now to do that, we'll need to clean the fitting as well. It's 1/2 inch, so I'm going to use a 1/2 inch brush. Just go in one direction, keeps the life of the brush a lot longer. And you can see inside, shining like chrome. Check, don't want to miss any spots. Touch it up a little bit. Now you have our flux. You're going to stir it up, get it real good and thick and mixed up well. Now, if you don't know where to put the flux, you always put it on the contact points. The pipe goes inside the flux, pipe goes inside the fitting, so the flux goes in the fitting. The outside of the pipe is going to touch the fitting, so you put the flux on the outside of the pipe. Push the two together. Now that it's pushed together, you're ready to start soldering it. Now say that you need to cut the pipe because it's too long. If for some reason you need to cut the pipe, this is how you do it. Now you want it perfectly flat. This has a little bit of angle because it was cut with a hacksaw. It's not acceptable. So you can use these cutters here. You just loosen them up one way, tighten them up the other. Get this copper pipe in here, where it's between the wheels and the blade. Snug up the handle, give it a couple of turns until it gets easy to spin. Snug it up, couple of turns, and keep on until your cut is finished. And there you go, you got a clean cut. Now if for some reason the pipe is down where you can't get these big cutters in here and it won't spin, that's where you use the mini cutters. Exact same process, just a lot more room and accessibility. Now, the most important part to this is obviously the torch. You got the control handle with the adjustment for flow, the tip, some kind of striking device, maybe a lighter, or you can just use a carbide striker. And this has a hose that's running to an acetylene tank, because that's the kind of gas we're using, and a regulator. Now, before I start lighting this and making a lot of noise, I'm going to explain the process. What you'll do is you barely crack it open. Light the torch, then adjust your flow. If you start off too big, this thing can burst in your hands. It's really not the most dangerous thing in the world, but I'd say it's like texting and driving. There's a lot going on. If you don't pay attention, something bad is going to happen. Now, when you've got it lit and you lean over or something, you can move the torch around, start burning your wife, your house, so on. So really got to pay attention where everything's going on in your surroundings. Now, once you've got it lit, you crack it open slowly and you light the torch. When the torch is going, we've already got this cleaned and fluxed. You grab the solder. Like I said, I like to curve the tip. Really helps you get around to the back of the fitting for a good surrounding. You take the torch and you start with the fitting. And while you're heating up the fitting, and you can sit there and you can kind of tap, and if it doesn't start melting yet, it's not ready. When the solder does start to melt, you want to heat up the pipe a little too, but keep the heat on the fitting because the solder is going to follow the heat. So if it's over here, it's going to suck it right in real good. So when it's all heated up, put the solder on here. Make sure you get all the way around. When it drips, it's filled up pretty good. I like to see it drip about 2 or 3 times. And then after you're done, just go across the pipe and the fitting once or twice to really help pull in the solder. Now that I explained it, let me do it for you. If you want, you can use a paper towel or even your flux brush and kind of clean up your solder joint, make it look a little better. Never cool it down instantly because that can cause cracks in the solder joint. Now, be careful because the pipe's hot, so don't think that you can immediately touch it afterwards. I've seen a lot of licensed plumbers make that mistake. You can see here you got a good clean solder joint. The flux is still on that. You want to wipe it off when you're through. Like I said, be careful. Still very hot. You don't want to cool it down on your own because, as I said, it can cause cracks in the solder joint. Now, you got you a good solder joint. Everything looks good. Like I said, if it's a pipe you can't move around, you can always use a mirror if you can't see the other side. When you can, try to leave these things to licensed professionals, but if you think you can handle the task, this is how I would do it. As always, you can look us up at precision-plumbing.com or call us with any questions at 469-248-2136.